She was little, that's all. 5 words, delivered quietly to a 67-year-old stranger in a Hell's Angels vest. An answer to a question nobody had thought to ask an 11-year-old boy lying in a hospital bed with 2 fractured ribs, 7 stitches above his left eye, and broken glasses in his lap. 4 years, 14 reported incidents, not one consequence. The system wasn't broken. It was working exactly as one man had designed it to work. But nobody designed it to withstand 317 motorcycles on a Saturday morning. This is Emmett Carson's story, and what Porter Blackwood found in those broken glasses would pull down 4 years of the most careful protection money could quietly buy. Room 214, Dearborn Heights Medical Center, Friday evening, 5:47. The room was standard pediatric recovery, 2 beds, the second empty, fluorescent overhead half dimmed, a window showing the hospital parking structure, the specific institutional beige of every room where difficult things happen. Emmett sat up at a 40-degree angle in the bed, not lying down, because lying down felt like surrender, and he wasn't ready for that yet. His backpack sat on the chair beside him. The broken glasses were in his lap. Black wire frame, left lens shattered into a spider web of cracks that caught the fluorescent light and split it into fragments. Right lens intact, nose bridge bent where something hard had made contact with force. He was alone when Porter entered. His mother, Nora Carson, was in the family waiting area down the hall, 40 feet away, where a well-meaning nurse had told her to wait because Emmett needed quiet. Nora had been sitting there for 23 minutes staring at a poster about hand washing, trying not to think about the lease renewal notice that had arrived yesterday with a 9% rent increase. Emmett hadn't asked for his mother to come back. He didn't want her to see him figure out how to hold this. The door opened. A large man in a Hell's Angels vest stepped through. 67 years old, 6'1", moving with the deliberate care of someone with bad knees who didn't let that slow him down. Gray hair close-cropped, reading glasses in his inner vest pocket that he hadn't put on yet, a prosthetic left index finger from a 1997 industrial accident at Ford River Rouge. He held a small yellow coat folded over his left arm. Porter stopped in the doorway for 2 full seconds. He took in the stitches, the swollen eye, the broken glasses in Emmett's lap, the cracked digital watch on the boy's right wrist, still showing the correct time despite the casing split along the lower edge, the backpack on the chair, the way the boy was sitting up straight in a hospital bed, trying not to look like he was in pain. Porter recognized something in that posture. He had only ever felt it from the inside before. Porter set the yellow coat on the chair beside the backpack, pulled the visitor's chair to the bedside, sat down. He didn't stand over the boy. "That was my granddaughter today," Porter said. "Hazel. She's 8. Emmett nodded once. He hadn't known her name. "I need to ask you something," Porter said. Not accusatory, not rhetorical. He actually needed to know. "Why?" Emmett looked at the window for 2 seconds. The parking structure was filling with shadow as the October evening settled into that flat Michigan gray that meant winter was coming. Then he said it. "She was little, that's all." Porter didn't speak for 9 seconds after he heard it. He reached out with his right hand, the one with all the 5 fingers, and set it flat on the bed beside Emmett's hand. Not on it, beside it. He looked at the broken glasses and didn't look away from them. "Nobody did that for me," Porter said quietly. To the glasses, not to Emmett's face, not once. He reached into his vest pocket with his left hand and took out his phone. Before he dialed, he looked at Emmett and said something the boy wouldn't fully understand for years. "You're not alone in this anymore. That's done." Then he called Chainsaw. But to understand why that phone call would change everything, why 317 men would drop their Friday night plans and ride through the night to stand on a sidewalk outside a suburban elementary school, you need to understand what happened in that parking lot 6 hours earlier. And you need to understand what had been happening in Dearborn Heights, Michigan for 4 years before that. Friday, October 11th, 3:29 in the afternoon. Ridgemont K-8 Academy, East parking lot. Emmett Carson was walking home alone. Same route he took every day. Past the bike racks that nobody used anymore because someone had cut the locks off 3 of them last spring. Past the trophy case window where you could see the reflections of cars pulling out. Past the east gate that led to Middle Belt Road and the 15-minute walk to the apartment complex where he'd lived his whole life. That's when he saw them. 4 boys, 1 small girl in a yellow coat. The girl was crying before Emmett reached them. Tyler Thornwell, 15 years old, sophomore at Dearborn Heights High, but still returning to the middle school area because his network was there and he'd never experienced a consequence that required him to change his geography. Tyler stood directly in front of the girl, blocking her path to the gate. Three other boys, ages 14 to 15, formed a loose semicircle behind Tyler, the formation of young predators who'd practiced this. The girl was 8, maybe 70 pounds, trying to walk around them, failing. Emmett stopped walking. He had seen Tyler do this before, twice. He had reported it twice. Both times the reports went to Principal Patricia Renwick's office. Both times he was told the matter had been reviewed and addressed. Tyler was at school the following Monday. Both times. The system that was supposed to work had taught Emmett very clearly that it didn't. He looked at the girl in the yellow coat. He looked at Tyler Thornwell's back. He looked at the parking lot exit 30 feet away, where two Ridgemont K-8 staff members, a male PE teacher and a female aide, were getting into a car. The PE teacher made eye contact with Emmett across the lot, then looked at Tyler, then said something to his colleague. They drove away. 47 seconds later, the assault began. Emmett crossed the parking lot. He didn't run. He walked deliberately. Each step a choice, each step saying, I see this. I'm choosing not to walk past it. I know what happens next, and I'm choosing it anyway. He reached the group, positioned himself between the girl and Tyler. He had never met her before in his life. He didn't know her name was Hazel. He didn't know her grandfather was the reason 317 motorcycles would converge on this exact spot in less than 72 hours. He just knew she was small, and there were 4 of them, and he apparently couldn't make himself walk past it. Leave her alone, Emmett said. Tyler Thornwell looked at him for approximately 3 seconds, then smiled. The smile was worse than the anger would have been. You're that kid who keeps filing complaints, Tyler said. My dad handles those. Emmett didn't respond. Tyler stepped closer. You should have learned by now. Nothing happens when you file complaints about me. Nothing ever happens. I'm asking you to leave her alone, Emmett said again. The girl in the yellow coat ran. Smart kid. She got through the gate and kept running, her shoes slapping the pavement in a rhythm that would echo in Emmett's memory for months. The sound of someone small getting away. Tyler watched her go, then turned back to Emmett. That was a mistake, Tyler said. What happened next took 90 seconds. The first hit caught Emmett above the left eye. Tyler's class ring making contact. The sophomore class ring, heavy silver with a blue stone that would later be found to have Emmett's skin cells embedded in the setting, opening a 3-inch laceration that would require 7 stitches. Emmett raised his left forearm to shield his face. The stomping began when he went down. 2 boys grabbed his arms. Tyler delivered the kicks. The 4th boy watched the parking lot for witnesses. They had done this before. Not to Emmett, but the choreography was practiced. Smooth, efficient. Ribs 6 and 7 on the left side fractured under repeated pressure. The ER attending would circle the impact points in the chart. They would appear in the police report. They would also appear in the county prosecutor's filing 11 days later, though nobody knew that yet on this Friday afternoon in October. Emmett's glasses flew 6 feet when his head hit the asphalt. He heard them land, the specific sound of plastic and glass making contact with pavement. A small crystalline crack that meant something expensive was now broken. A passing driver stopped. The boys ran. Emmett lay on the ground for 14 seconds before he tried to sit up. The pain in his left side made him stop moving and focus entirely on breathing, shallow, controlled, each breath calculated to avoid pulling at the fractures. He looked for his glasses first, found them, 6 feet away lying next to a yellow parking space line, picked them up. The left lens was shattered. The nose bridge was bent. They didn't sit straight anymore when he tried to put them on. He held them in both hands when the ambulance arrived. He was still holding them when Porter walked into room 214 6 hours later. But between the parking lot and the hospital room, something else happened that would change everything. Hazel Blackwood ran. She ran through the gate, down Middle Belt Road, 3 blocks to her grandfather's house, the house with the Harley Davidson in the garage and the Hells Angels vest hanging on a hook beside the workbench. She burst through the front door at 3:37. Porter was in the kitchen, making coffee, planning to ride out to the clubhouse later that evening, maybe stop by the VFWW. It was Friday. He was 67 years old and retired from the Ford plant, and his Friday evenings had a comfortable rhythm to them that he appreciated. Hazel came through the door crying. Not the normal kid crying, the specific crying of a child who just learned something about the world that couldn't be unlearned. Porter set down the coffee, Dropped to one knee, bad knees and all, so he was eye level with his granddaughter. What happened? The story came out in fragments. 4 boys. The gate. A boy with glasses who stepped in front of them. The sound she heard as she ran away. Porter listened. Didn't interrupt. Didn't tell her it was okay. Because it wasn't okay and Hazel was 8 years old, but she was smart enough to know when adults were lying. When she finished, Porter asked one question. Where? Ridgemont K to 8, East parking lot. Porter made 3 phone calls in the next 15 minutes. The first was to his daughter Dana, Hazel's mother, night shift nurse at Beaumont Hospital. Told her Hazel was safe staying with him tonight, explained later. The second was to Ridgemont K-8 Academy main office. Got the answering machine. Left a message asking about an incident in the East parking lot that afternoon involving his granddaughter. Professional. Calm. The kind of message that goes into a log and gets returned Monday morning. The third call was to Jerry Michaels, road name Chainsaw, road captain, the man who'd ridden beside Porter for 31 years. Chainsaw Porter said when the line connected, I need you to find out if any kid got hurt at Ridgemont K-8 this afternoon. Check the hospitals. What am I looking for? A boy. Glasses, probably around 11, 12 years old. Got jumped protecting my granddaughter. Chainsaw didn't ask questions. You'll know in 20 minutes. 17 minutes later, Porter's phone rang. Dearborn Heights Medical Center, Chainsaw said. Emmett Carson, 11 years old. 2 fractured ribs, 7 stitches, admitted 445, still there. Porter grabbed his vest, his keys, walked to the garage. The Harley started on the first try. It always did. He'd rebuilt the engine himself in 2003 and maintained it the way a man maintains anything he might need to depend on. He pulled out of the garage at 5:23, arrived at Dearborn Heights Medical Center at 5:41, parked in the visitor lot, walked through the automatic doors carrying Hazel's yellow coat over his left arm because she'd taken it off in his truck on the way home and he'd been holding it ever since. At the nurse's station, he asked for Emmett Carson's room. The nurse looked at his vest, at the patches, at the gray hair and the weathered face and the prosthetic finger and the yellow coat. Are you family? She asked. No, Porter said, but I need to talk to him. Something in his voice made her check the chart. Room 214. His mother's in the waiting area if you want to speak with her first. I will, Porter said. After. He walked down the hallway. Institutional tile. The smell of antiseptic and cafeteria food, and the specific anxiety of people waiting for news about someone they love. He stopped outside room 214. Through the window in the door, he could see Emmett, sitting up, holding broken glasses, alone. Porter pushed the door open and walked in. That was my granddaughter today, Porter said, after he'd sat down. Hazel, she's 8. Emmett nodded once. He hadn't known her name. I need to ask you something. Not accusatory, not rhetorical. He actually needed to know. Why? Emmett looked at the window for 2 seconds, then said it. She was little, that's all. Porter didn't speak for 9 seconds after he heard it. He reached out with his right hand and set it flat on the bed beside Emmett's hand. Not on it, beside it. He looked at the broken glasses and didn't look away from them. Nobody did that for me, Porter said quietly. To the glasses, not to Emmett's face. Not once. He reached into his vest pocket and took out his phone. Before he dialed, he looked at Emmett. You're not alone in this anymore. That's done. He called Chainsaw. The line connected on the second ring. Porter said 3 sentences. The first sentence was, I need every brother within 50 miles. The second sentence was, a boy with 2 broken ribs just taught me something about courage. I should have learned 58 years ago. The third sentence was Saturday morning, all 3 chapters. Chainsaw didn't ask for proof, didn't ask for evidence, didn't ask what Porter needed them to do when they got there. He just said, how many kids in that school? 600, Porter said. Then they all see us, Chainsaw said. The line went dead. Porter put his phone back in his vest pocket. He looked at Emmett. You got somewhere safe to sleep tonight. We're going home after they discharge me, Emmett said. You got someone who can stay with you, and your mom. Someone Tyler Thornwell doesn't know about. The door opened. Nora Carson stepped through. She'd been outside the door for 4 minutes, trying to give Porter time, unable to stay away longer. She looked at Porter. She looked at Emmett. She looked at her son sitting up straight in a hospital bed, still trying to seem fine, so she wouldn't cry more than she already had. Then she took out her phone. I need to show you something, Nora said. She'd found Donna Creswell's number in the school directory, called her from the waiting room. Donna was the administrative assistant, had been at Ridgemont K-8 for 9 years, had watched things she wasn't supposed to watch. Donna had played a voicemail recording over the phone at 7:22. The voicemail County Commissioner Garrett Thornwell had left on Principal Renwick's direct cell at 6:54, 67 minutes after Emmett's injury diagnosis was confirmed. Nora had recorded it through her phone's speaker. She played it now. Garrett Thornwell's voice filled the hospital room. Patricia, it's Garrett. I assume you've heard about the incident today. I want to make sure we're handling this correctly, which means getting ahead of it before Monday. A pause. The Carson family is going to file a complaint. Let them file it. You know the protocol. 30 days. By then we're into the audit review period and nobody's looking at anything else. Another pause. I need the technology allocation finalized before the 15th. I want to make sure Ridgemont is taken care of. I always take care of the schools that take care of their students. Another pause, the pause where the threat lived even though no direct threat was spoken. And Patricia Tyler's file. Make sure what's in the system reflects the documented record. Not every internal note needs to be a permanent record. You know what I mean? Final pause. Call me back tonight. My door's always open. The recording ended. Emmett listened, looked at Porter, said quietly, "That's the scholarship fund. He controls who gets it. That's why the school doesn't do anything." Porter looked at the phone in Nora's hand. He looked at the broken glasses in Emmett's lap. He looked at the cracked watch on Emmett's wrist, still keeping the correct time despite the damage. Then he stood up, picked up the broken glasses from Emmett's lap carefully with both hands, set them on the bedside table. Not thrown away, set down. He walked to the window, looked out at the parking structure, at the October evening settling into that flat Michigan gray. He thought about a boy named Roy Vane, the man who'd taken Porter in after Porter's parents died in a house fire when Porter was 7. Roy had been a man who drank and couldn't manage the distance between what he intended and what he did, who'd never hit Porter where the bruises would show. Porter thought about being 9 years old and small for his age, about the specific weight of being a child in a room full of adults and being the only one who understood he was in danger. He thought about a boy at school, name unknown, face half forgotten after 58 years, who had stepped between Porter and 3 older kids outside the east fence one afternoon in 1965 and gotten knocked down for it and stood back up anyway. Nobody had ever found out that boy's name. Porter had been carrying that name-shaped absence for 58 years. On a Friday evening in October in a hospital room in Dearborn Heights, Michigan, he found it. He turned around. "I was a boy no one stepped in for," Porter said. "You stepped in for mine. Now I step in for you. That's the end of it." He called Chainsaw back. The line connected on the first ring. Porter said, "I need you to pull records tomorrow morning. Early, before anyone gets to their office. A boy named Tyler Thornwell, 15, 4 years at Ridgemont K-8. I need his complete behavioral file, physical and digital. I need the comparison." "Who do I call?" Marcus Davidson, Porter said. "He'll know how." Hawk was 48 years old, former Detroit PD Juvenile Crimes Unit. 14 years on the job before he'd quit because he was tired of watching the same kids cycle through the same system and nothing ever changing. He'd met Porter at a veterans benefit ride in 2012, started doing investigation work for the chapter in 2015. Hawk knew every school administrator, juvenile court intake officer, and police watch commander in Wayne County. More importantly, he knew how to pull records that people didn't want pulled. Porter gave Chainsaw Hawk's number, then turned to Nora. "You got a sister in Inkster." Nora blinked. "How did you know that?" "I pay attention," Porter said. "You and Emmett are staying there tonight. Pack a bag for the weekend. Don't tell anyone where you're going. Not the school, not neighbors, nobody." "What's happening Saturday?" Nora asked. Porter looked at her, at the exhaustion in her face, at the specific fear of a parent who'd been trying to protect her child through the proper channels and watching every channel close. "You ever seen 300 motorcycles in one place?" Nora shook her head. "You will," Porter said. "By 10 o'clock Saturday morning, every student, every parent, every teacher, and every administrator at Ridgemont K-8 is going to see exactly what happens when you hurt a child who has family." He looked at Emmett. "You're part of that family now, whether you ask for it or not." Emmett didn't say anything. He was processing, trying to understand what a Hell's Angel in a hospital room on a Friday night meant for Monday morning at school. Porter saw the question forming. "You're going to school Monday," Porter said. "Tyler Thornwell is not. That's a promise. And I don't make promises I can't keep." He walked to the door, stopped, turned back. "Those glasses," Porter said, nodding at the bedside table. Someone's going to bring you new ones tomorrow morning. Same frames, both lenses. You keep the broken ones if you want, but you're going to see clearly when you walk into that school Monday. That's also a promise. Then he left. Friday, October 11th, 6:17 in the evening. Tyler Thornwell sent a text message to two of the boys who'd been with him that afternoon. It read, "Next time is worse. Tell him." The message was relayed to Emmett's hospital room via a classmate at 6:30. Nora saw it, took a screenshot, put it in a folder on her phone labeled Evidence. It would become Exhibit 3A in the county prosecutor's filing 11 days later. But there was a second message. This one Tyler didn't know had been forwarded to someone who would forward it to Porter by 7:15. "My dad says this goes away Monday. The Carson family doesn't know who they're messing with." Porter read it standing in his garage at 7:23. He didn't respond to the message, just forwarded it to Hawk with one line, "Evidence of consciousness of guilt. Preserve it." Then he walked back into his house. Hazel was asleep upstairs in the guest room. The yellow coat was folded on the chair beside the kitchen table. Porter sat down, made coffee he didn't drink, looked at his phone. Text from Chainsaw sent at 7:03, "Making calls now, counts at 41. By midnight we'll have 200. Porter texted back, "Good." He thought about Emmett sitting in that hospital bed, holding broken glasses in both hands, answering the question why with 5 words that contained an entire moral position. She was little, that's all. Porter thought about the boy in 1965, the nameless boy who'd stepped in, who Porter had never been able to thank, who disappeared into the crowd of memory and time and the ordinary forgetting that happens when you're 9 years old and don't understand yet that some moments should be preserved. He couldn't thank that boy, but he could do this. He stood up, walked upstairs, checked on Hazel. She was sleeping with one arm over her face the way she'd slept since she was 3 years old. The yellow coat was downstairs, but she'd gotten away. That mattered. Porter went to his room, set his alarm for 5:30, lay down on top of the covers fully dressed except for his boots. He didn't expect to sleep, but sometime around 9:47 he did. He dreamed about motorcycles, hundreds of them, riding through a gray Michigan morning toward a school where a boy with broken glasses was waiting to see if anyone would show up. Friday, 7 in the evening to midnight, across 3 states. Chainsaw made his first call at 7:03. Gerald Morrison, road name Tank, Sergeant-at-Arms, 49 years old, former Detroit PD. The man who trained half the younger brothers in the chapter on how to navigate the system without becoming part of it. Tank answered on the first ring. "Tank, emergency ride, Dearborn Heights, tomorrow morning, pass it on." "What's the situation?" "Child assault, county commissioner's son, system protected the wrong kid for 4 years. How many do you need?" "Everyone." "Consider it done." The second call went to Marcus Davidson. "Hawk, I need you to pull records tomorrow morning, early, before anyone gets to their office." "What am I looking for?" "A boy named Tyler Thornwell, 15, 4 years at Ridgemont K8. I need his complete behavioral file, physical and digital. I need the comparison. I need it documented, and I need the name of every administrator who touched those files." "Who's the victim?" 11-year-old named Emmett Carson, 2 broken ribs, 7 stitches. Took a 4-on-1 beating, defending an 8-year-old girl he'd never met. Reported Tyler twice before, nothing happened either time. Hawk didn't speak for 3 seconds. "I'll have it by 8 in the morning, he said. "What else?" "There's a voicemail. County Commissioner Garrett Thornwell to Principal Patricia Renwick. Recorded tonight. Talks about suppressing Tyler's file managing the 30-day complaint window and scholarship fund allocation. I need to know how that fund works, who controls it, and whether Thornwell's using it as leverage. I know a guy," Hawk said, "former Wayne County Assistant Prosecutor. Financial crimes. He'll know the architecture." "Call him tonight," Chainsaw said. The third call went to Richard Caldwell, 55 years old, 18 years as Wayne County Assistant Prosecutor, Financial Crimes Division. Left to open a private practice in 2019. New scholarship fund law county subcommittee procedure and exactly how Garrett Thornwell's reserve reclassification language would read to a state AG investigator. Hawk Conference called him at 7:34. "Cold, Hawk here. I'm looping you into something. County Scholarship Fund, Commissioner administered. Possible leverage situation connected to juvenile behavioral complaint suppression. I need to know if a commissioner chairs the subcommittee that controls school funding allocations. Can he use that as informal pressure to influence how a school handles disciplinary records?" Not legally, Caldwell said. But leverage doesn't require explicit language. It just requires everyone understanding what the money means. You said scholarship fund. Dearborn Heights Community Youth Scholarship Fund. Garrett Thornwell chairs the Education Funding Subcommittee. Caldwell was quiet for 4 seconds. I know that fund, he said. We audited it in 2019. Clean then. But the audit threshold is $75,000 per transaction. If someone wanted to divert funds without triggering review, they'd structure transfers below that threshold and accumulate them across fiscal years. How would I see that? You'd need the subcommittee's non-public disbursement records, and you'd need the fund's reserve reclassification language from the annual reports. If those two things don't match, if money is being reclassified as operational reserve, but not actually staying in the fund, that's your evidence. Where would those records be? Thornwell's office, or his home office if he's keeping personal copies. Combination locked filing cabinet would be standard. The reserve reclassification language would be in the official subcommittee reports, but the manual adjustments would be in the document metadata. You'd need forensic access to his laptop. How fast can you file if I bring you that evidence? If it's solid Sunday morning, fraud complaint with the county, petition to unseal any prior settlements involving Thornwell, request for emergency audit of the scholarship fund. The state AG's office moves fast on education fund fraud. I'll call you tomorrow, Hawk said. The fourth call went to 6 brothers in the Michigan chapter. The fifth and sixth went to road captains in neighboring chapters. The seventh went to Ohio, the eighth to Indiana. By midnight, the count was 241 confirmed. By 6 in the morning Saturday, it would be 307. By the time the sun came up over Ridgemont K-8 Academy, it would be 317. Friday, 11:47. Porter's kitchen. Porter sat at his kitchen table with a cup of coffee he wasn't drinking. Hazel was asleep upstairs. His daughter Donna wouldn't be home from her shift until 7 in the morning. Porter looked at the yellow coat folded on the chair beside him. He thought about Hazel running through that gate, the sound of her shoes on the pavement, the crying that meant she'd just learned something about the world that couldn't be unlearned. He thought about Emmett sitting in that hospital bed, holding broken glasses in both hands, answering why with 5 words that contained an entire moral position. She was little, that's all. He thought about being 9 years old in 1965, about a nameless boy stepping between him and 3 older kids, getting knocked down, standing back up. Porter thought about Roy Vane, about the house he'd left at 17, about the years he'd spent building something that felt like family, because the family he'd been born into had burned, and the family that took him in had taught him that love and harm could live in the same hands. He thought about the 31 years he'd worn this patch, about the 100-plus brothers who'd become the answer to a question he'd been asking since 1965. What does it look like when someone steps in? His phone buzzed. Text from Chainsaw. 317. 3 chapters. Staging at 0630. Ridgemont K-8 main entrance. East sidewalk. Public property. Hawk has records request filed. Caldwell standing by. Documentation crew confirmed. Porter read the message twice. 317 motorcycles. He texted back, see you at dawn. Set the phone down, looked at the yellow coat, looked at the clock on the wall. In 8 hours, 317 motorcycles would converge on a suburban elementary school. In 8 hours, Garrett Thornwell would wake up in a world that still worked the way it had always worked for him. By noon, that world would be over. Porter stood up, walked to the window, looked out at his garage, at the Harley inside it, at the vest hanging on the hook beside the workbench. He thought about Emmett one more time, about a boy who'd stepped in knowing exactly what would happen, about broken glasses and a cracked watch and 2 fractured ribs and 5 words that had mobilized 317 men. She was little, that's all. Porter smiled for the first time since walking into room 214. Yeah, he said quietly to the empty kitchen. That's all it takes. Then he went upstairs to get 4 hours of sleep before the most important Saturday of his life. Saturday, October 12th, 6:31 in the morning. Ridgemont K-8 Academy, East parking lot. Marcus Davidson arrived first. He pulled his truck into the visitor parking area across from the school's main entrance, killed the engine, sat for a moment in the pre-dawn quiet. The sky was that particular shade of gray that Michigan October mornings specialized in. Not quite dark, not quite light, just flat and waiting. Hawk had a public records request already filed. Submitted electronically at 11:47 Friday night, To the Dearborn Heights School District Administrative Office. Copied to the Wayne County School Board. Timestamp for legal standing. The request was specific. All behavioral incident records for Tyler Thornwell, student ID 8472193, physical and digital spanning 4 academic years. He also had Principal Patricia Renwick's direct office line, her cell number, and the name of the administrative assistant who'd been at Ridgemont K-8 for 9 years and had watched things she wasn't supposed to watch. At 6:34, a silver Honda pulled into the lot. Donna Creswell got out. 52, administrative assistant, still wearing her coat. She'd been sitting in her car in the parking lot since 6:15, waiting for someone to arrive, because she'd been holding a recording on her phone for 14 hours and hadn't slept. She walked directly to Hawk's truck. He rolled down the window. She didn't say anything, just took out her phone, pulled up the audio file, pressed play. Garrett Thornwell's voice filled the truck cab. "Patricia, it's Garrett. I assume you've heard about the incident today." Hawk listened to the full recording twice. When it finished the second time, he looked at Donna. "How long have you known?" he asked quietly. 2 years, Donna said. "I started keeping a log of the phone calls. Every time a parent filed a complaint about Tyler Thornwell called Renwick within 48 hours. Every time, 11 calls in 18 months. You have that log." She handed him a small spiral notebook. 11 entries, dates, parent names, complaint summaries. Every entry followed by Thornwell call, date time complaint status, closed insufficient documentation. Hawk read through it once. "Why didn't you report this?" Donna's hands were shaking slightly. "To who? Renwick's my supervisor. The district superintendent plays golf with Thornwell. I called the teachers union rep last year about something I'd seen in the files. She told me that without direct evidence of policy violation, bringing this up would make me the problem, not the solution. I have 2 kids in college. I can't afford to be the problem." Hawk nodded once. He understood the specific arithmetic of institutional silence. "You're not the problem anymore," he said. "You're the witness. And that recording is going to be Exhibit 2A in a fraud complaint we're filing tomorrow morning. Can I have a copy?" "You can have the original," Donna said. "I don't want it on my phone anymore." She sent the file to Hawk's email, watched the progress bar complete, then deleted it from her device. "There's something else," she said. "The behavioral files, physical versus digital. I'm not supposed to know this, but the physical file for Tyler has 14 logged incidents. The digital file, the one that goes to the district in the state, shows 4. I've been watching Renwick remove entries for 3 years. She does it herself, late, after I leave. But the document access log shows her login. Can you get me into that office?" Donna looked at the school building, at the empty parking lot, at the sky getting lighter by degrees. "I have a key," she said. 6:47. The first motorcycle arrived. Chainsaw, 56 years old. The man every cop in Wayne County knew by name. Pulled his Harley into the east lot entrance. Parked it perpendicular to the main school entrance at a legal distance from school property. Killed the engine. He didn't get off the bike, just sat there, drinking coffee from a thermos, watching the sun come up over the east fence, the fence where it happened. By 7:03, there were 19 motorcycles. By 7:31, 74. By 8:15, 163. They parked in formation, tight, disciplined rows. No one revving engines, no one shouting, no one blocking the street or the sidewalk or the school entrance. Just presence. Chrome gleaming in the growing light. Leather vests bearing the same insignia. Men standing beside their bikes. Arms crossed. Silent. Waiting. 7:23 in the morning. Inside Ridgemont K-8, principal's office. Hawk stood in Patricia Renwick's office with Donna beside him. The physical file for Tyler Thornwell was on the desk. 14 incident reports spanning 4 years. Each one documented, each one signed by the reporting teacher or staff member. The digital file pulled from the district system on Donna's desktop terminal showed 4 incidents. Hawk photographed every page of the physical file, then opened his laptop and pulled the digital records. Created a side-by-side comparison in a spreadsheet that took him 19 minutes to build. 14 incidents, 4 recorded. The gap between those numbers was Garrett Thornwell's operational fingerprint. At 7:42, the office door opened. Ms. Sullivan walked in. 39 years old, 6th grade homeroom teacher, 5 years at Ridgemont. She was holding a handwritten notebook. "Donna called me last night," Ms. Sullivan said. "She told me someone was finally looking. I have this." She handed the notebook to Hawk. 9 entries, dates, Tim's, incidents involving Tyler Thornwell, witnesses listed, direct quotes from Tyler documented. Every entry ending with reported to Renwick date status, insufficient documentation for escalation. The cafeteria incident from 6 weeks ago was entry number 7. Tyler's threat, next time you file a complaint, I'm going to make sure you can't walk home, was written in Ms. Sullivan's careful handwriting, witnessed by 14 students whose names she'd listed. That incident did not appear in the physical file. It did not appear in the digital file. It existed only in Ms. Sullivan's personal notebook, kept in her desk drawer because she'd understood after the first 2 attempts that the official system was not designed to document what she was seeing. "Why didn't you take this to the district?" Hawk asked. Miss Sullivan's voice was steady, but her hands weren't. "I tried last year. I made an appointment with the assistant superintendent, brought my log. He listened for about 5 minutes, then told me the district couldn't act on personal documentation that existed outside official channels, and that if I had concerns about administrative procedure, I should address them through the teacher evaluation process, not by maintaining shadow records." What happened after that meeting? My classroom budget was cut 40% in the following semester. When I asked why, I was told it was district-wide resource reallocation. I was the only 6th grade teacher whose budget was cut. Hawk looked at the notebook, at Donna, at the files on the desk. "You're both going to be subpoenaed," he said quietly. "Probably Monday. Everything you've shown me today becomes part of an official investigation. Your names will be in documents. Are you prepared for that?" Donna and Ms. Sullivan looked at each other. "I'm tired of being afraid to do my job," Ms. Sullivan said. "I'm tired of watching kids get hurt while I file paperwork that goes nowhere," Donna said. "Then we're done hiding," this Hawk said. At 7:47, he walked out of the school with 14 photographed incident reports, a 9-entry teacher's log, an 11-entry phone call log, and a voicemail recording that would end Garrett Thornwell's career before Monday morning. He also had something else. In the bottom drawer of Renwick's filing cabinet lock, but Donna had the key, was a folder labeled Scholarship Committee Admin Correspondence. Inside, printed emails between Renwick and Thornwell spanning 3 years. Most were procedural, budget allocations, program funding confirmations, technology grants approved. But 3 emails stood out. The first from Thornwell to Renwick, dated 14 months ago, Patricia confirming full allocation for reading intervention specialist position and extended day program. "Ridgemont continues to be a priority in our education funding initiatives. Let me know if there's anything else the school needs. Garrett." The second from Renwick to Thornwell, dated 11 months ago, sent 2 days after a parent filed a formal complaint about Tyler Garrett. "Thank you for following up on the matter we discussed. I've reviewed the incident report and determined that the documentation does not meet the threshold for formal escalation per district protocol. The matter is closed. On a separate note, I wanted to confirm receipt of the technology allocation. This will make a significant difference for our students. Patricia." The third from Thornwell to Renwick, dated 6 months ago. "Patricia, I want to make sure Ridgemont is getting everything it deserves. You're doing excellent work there. I'll always be an advocate for this school. Let me know if you need anything. My door is always open. Garrett." Hawk photographed all 3. The phrase "my door is always open" appeared in 2 of them. It also appeared in the voicemail Thornwell left Friday night. It wasn't a courtesy, it was a signature. 8:02, Dearborn Heights Police Department, Watch Commander's office. Hawk walked into the station with a folder under his arm. The watch commander, Lieutenant Marcus Webb, 23 years on the force, had worked with Hawk back when Hawk was still Detroit PD. Looked up from his coffee. "Hawk, it's Saturday. You're supposed to be sleeping." "I need 5 minutes," Hawk said. He laid out the comparison on Webb's desk. Physical file 14 incidents, digital file 4 incidents. The spreadsheet showing the discrepancy, the witness logs, the email correspondence, the voicemail. Webb read through it without speaking. When he finished, he set his coffee down and picked up his phone. "Who am I calling?" Webb asked. "Detective Craig Palmer. He's the one who took Nora Carson's harassment complaint 4 months ago and filed it as pending intake. He's also the one who told her yesterday that juvenile charging thresholds make timeline expectations complicated." "Palmer's off today." "Not anymore," Hawk said. Webb made the call. It rang 4 times. "Palmer, it's Webb. I need you to come in now." Hawk could hear Palmer's voice through the phone, faint but audible. "Sir, it's Saturday. I'm off rotation until—" "I don't care what rotation you're on," Webb said. I have a file on my desk showing a 4-year pattern of suppressed behavioral complaints, a county commissioner's voicemail discussing document management with a school principal, and your name on 2 juvenile harassment reports that are still marked pending after 4 and 7 months. You're coming in now. The line was quiet for 3 seconds. I'll be there in 20 minutes, Palmer said. Webb hung up. What else do you need, he asked Hawk. I need you to know that as of about 10 minutes ago, there are 200 motorcycles parked on the public sidewalk across from Ridgemont K8. By 9 o'clock, there will be over 300. They're not blocking access. They're not on school property. They're not carrying weapons. They're just standing there. Standing there doing what? Making an 11-year-old boy visible, Hawk said. Because for 4 years, every adult with institutional authority made him invisible. Webb looked at the file on his desk, at the 14 incidents that had been reduced to 4, at the emails that never quite said the illegal thing out loud but structured a relationship where everyone understood what the money meant. I'm not interfering with a peaceful assembly on public property, Webb said. I know, Hawk said. That's why I came to you first. 8:30. Ridgemont K8 Academy, East Sidewalk. The rumble started low, distant, like thunder on the horizon. Then it grew. The sound of engines, dozens of them, then hundreds, rolling in from 3 directions. Harley-Davidsons. The deep, unmistakable growl of American iron. The formation pulled in with military precision. Tight rows, synchronized movements. Bikes parking one after another in perfect alignment along the public sidewalk opposite the school's main entrance. 317 motorcycles. The engines cut off almost in unison. The sudden silence after all that noise felt heavy, expectant. 317 men in leather vests stood beside their bikes, arms crossed, silent, faces calm, not angry, not threatening, just present. By 8:47, parents arriving to drop off kids for Saturday enrichment programs slowed their cars, stared. Some kept driving, some pulled over, some took out their phones. One mother driving a minivan with 2 children in car seats stopped at the red light adjacent to the school entrance. She looked at the wall of motorcycles, at the men standing silent and still, at the school behind them. She rolled down her window. What's happening, she called to the nearest biker. Tank, sergeant at arms, former Detroit PD, walked to her window, crouched slightly so they were eye level. A boy got hurt defending a little girl yesterday, Tank said calmly. 4-on-1, 2 broken ribs. He'd reported the bullies twice before. Nothing happened. We're here to make sure everyone knows his name now. The mother looked at Tank, at his vest, at the 316 other men behind him. What's the boy's name, she asked. Emmett Carson, Tank said. The mother nodded once, wrote it on her hand with a pen from her cup holder. Thank you, she said, then drove away. By 9:15, a news van from the local CBS affiliate pulled into the lot. By 9:47, there were 3 news crews. None of them were asked to leave. This was public property. This was a peaceful assembly. This was 317 men standing in daylight in front of cameras, making a single statement without saying a word. This child mattered, and you were going to see that he mattered. 9:30. Porter drove to Nora's sister's house in Inkster, the house where Emmett and Nora had been staying since Friday night. He knocked. Nora answered. She looked like she'd slept maybe 3 hours. Probably had. Is he awake? Porter asked. He's been awake since 6, Nora said. He knows something's happening. I didn't tell him what. Can I talk to him? Nora stepped aside. Emmett was sitting on the couch in the living room, still moving carefully because of the ribs. The stitches above his eye were clean. No signs of infection. The swelling around his left eye had gone down slightly, but was now a deep purple that would get worse before it got better. He was holding his broken glasses. Porter sat down in the chair across from him. There are 317 motorcycles outside your school right now, Porter said. They've been there since 7 this morning. They're going to stay until everyone who needs to see them has seen them. Emmett stared at Porter. Why, he asked. Because you stepped in when no one else would, Porter said. And because for 4 years, adults with the power to stop this looked the other way. That ends today. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small bag, handed it to Emmett. Inside, a new pair of glasses. Black wire frame, both lenses intact, same style as the broken ones. Try them on, Porter said. Emmett put them on slowly, adjusted them, looked around the room. Everything was sharp, clear, the way it was supposed to be. They fit, Emmett said quietly. You keep the broken ones if you want, Porter said. But you see clearly now. That's the deal. Emmett took the new glasses off. set them beside him on the couch, picked up the broken ones, looked at the shattered left lens, at the bent nose bridge. "I want to keep these," he said. "Then keep them," Porter said. He stood up, started to leave, stopped. "Emmett, what you did Friday, stepping in when you knew what would happen. That's not something I can teach. You already know it. You're braver than I was at your age. Braver than most men I know now. Don't ever think that what happened to you means you did something wrong." Emmett looked up at Porter. "Are they going to expel Tyler?" he asked. "Tyler's not going to be at that school Monday," Porter said. "I don't know if it'll be expulsion or charges or both, but I know this. He's done hurting people and walking away from it." Porter walked to the door. Nora followed him. "What happens next?" she asked quietly. "We're filing a fraud complaint against Garrett Thornwell this morning," Porter said. "Scholarship fund diversion. The school principal will probably be called as a witness. The police are reopening Tyler's harassment cases. And every parent in that district is going to know exactly what happened when Emmett tried to report this and the system buried it." Nora's eyes were wet. She didn't say anything for a moment. "Thank you," she finally managed. "Don't thank me yet," Porter said. "We haven't finished, but we will." 10:52. Richard Caldwell's home office. Caldwell sat at his desk with documents spread across every available surface. Financial records, subcommittee reports, bank statements, county business registry filings. Hawk had sent him everything at 8:34. Photographs, PDFs, the voicemail audio file. Now Caldwell was building the architecture. The Dearborn Heights Community Youth Scholarship Fund received $214,600 annually from the county education budget. Garrett Thornwell administered disbursements through the Education Funding Subcommittee. That was normal. What wasn't normal was this. Caldwell opened 3 files side by side on his screen. 3 years of subcommittee disbursement records. Not the public reports, the internal tracking documents that showed recommended allocations versus actual transfers. Year 1. Recommended allocation to Ridgemont K-8, $71,000. Actual transfer, $71,000. But the fund balance at year-end showed a $71,000 reserve reclassification. That money didn't stay in the fund. It went somewhere. Where? Caldwell pulled up another document. County Business Registry. Bradford Community Partners, LLC. Registered to Thornwell's wife. Established 3 years ago. Same month as the first reserve reclassification. And here, bank statement. 3 annual transfers of $71,533 from a holding account that traced back to the scholarship fund reserve line. Thornwell was pulling $71,533 annually, just under the audit threshold of $75,000, accumulated over 3 fiscal years. Total $214,600, down to the dollar. Caldwell ran Thornwell's name through probate court records, found a sealed settlement from 2016. Wayne County case number 16PR8847. Plaintiff disability rights advocate on behalf of James Thornwell, Garrett's younger brother. James had a developmental disability. Garrett was named trustee of James's Disability Benefit Trust in 2014. The trust was worth $147,800. By 2016, it was zero, depleted. Garrett documented the disbursements as Housing Medical Coordination and Transitional Support Services. The probate court found it substantively compliant, but the advocate filed a civil complaint anyway. Settlement $147,800 paid by Garrett Thornwell, personally over 5 years, completed 2021. He'd done this before. Same pattern, same reclassification language. Both were structured around review windows. Probate court's annual review for James. County audit threshold for the scholarship fund. Caldwell pulled up 3 more documents. Lake Cabin in Harrison Township, purchased 16 months ago through Bradford Community Partners, LLC, $156,800. Campaign expense. Self-funding contribution for Thornwell's 2021 re-election, $41,300. FEC filing publicly available. Never cross-referenced against the BCP LLC accounts. And a 2024 Cadillac Escalade, registered to his wife, $78,400 paid through the BCP LLC operating account. Total traceable spending, $276,500. He stole from a scholarship fund meant for kids after he stole from his disabled brother's trust. and he used his position as county commissioner to make sure no one looked too close. Caldwell picked up his phone, called Hawk. "I have it," Caldwell said. "All of it, documentary proof. I can file Sunday morning." 2:14 in the afternoon, FBI building, Detroit. Agent Sarah Mitchell walked into the interview room where Hawk and Caldwell were waiting. 38 years old, Financial Crimes Division. She'd been building a case against a network of county-level education fund fraud for 11 months. Had hit a wall 3 weeks ago when her key witness refused to testify without corroborating documentation she couldn't provide. "I'm told you have something relevant to an open federal investigation," Mitchell said. "Depends on what you're investigating," Hawk said. Mitchell sat down, set a folder on the table, but didn't open it. Garrett Thornwell, Wayne County Commissioner. Possible connection to irregularities in education, fund disbursements across 3 districts. We've had financial surveillance on him for 7 months. We know the money's moving wrong. We don't have the mechanism. Caldwell opened his laptop, turned it toward Mitchell. The mechanism is reserve reclassification language below the audit threshold, structured across fiscal years, transferred to a shell LLC, registered to his wife. We have 3 years of internal disbursement records showing the accumulation. We have bank statements showing the transfers. We have email correspondence showing how he pressured a school principal to suppress behavioral complaints about his son in exchange for continued funding allocation. And we have metadata from his county laptop showing manual adjustments to fund documents. Mitchell looked at the screen, started reading, didn't stop for 4 minutes. When she looked up, her expression had changed. "How long has your office known about Thornwell?" Hawk asked. Mitchell's jaw tightened slightly. 7 months. We built the case legally, carefully, by the book. While kids were still getting hurt, Hawk said quietly. Mitchell didn't respond. She didn't have a good response. "We got a boy out of a hospital bed Friday night," Hawk said. "You had 7 months. We had 18 hours. The room went quiet. "I need this authenticated," Mitchell said finally. "If it checks out, it fills gaps we haven't been able to close, and it changes the scope of the charges significantly." "It's yours," Caldwell said. "On one condition, the victim, Emmett Carson, gets a victim advocate signed before any interviews, and nobody talks to him without his mother present and without him asking first." Mitchell nodded once. "Agreed." She stood up, collected the laptop Caldwell handed her. "We'll be in touch," she said. "Agent Mitchell," Hawk said. She turned. "Do right by that boy." Mitchell looked at him for a moment. "That's the job," she said, then left. 4:47 in the afternoon. Nora Carson's apartment, Dearborn Heights. Nora stood in her kitchen, holding a notice from her landlord. Rent increase, 9%, effective in 30 days. Her checking account balance, $847. Before the hospital copay, before the glasses replacement, before the rent increase she couldn't afford. She'd been staring at the notice for 11 minutes when her phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello, Mrs. Carson. This is Linda at Ridgemont Property Management. I'm calling about the notice you received today." Nora's throat tightened. "Yeah, there's been an error. The increase was sent to you in error. Your lease will renew at the current rate. I apologize for the confusion." "I don't understand." "There was a change in ownership structure this weekend. The new management reviewed recent decisions and determined certain increase notices were inconsistent with company policy. Your apartment is secure, Mrs. Carson. You won't be receiving any further increase notices this year." Nora hung up the phone, stood in her kitchen for a long moment, trying to understand. Her phone buzzed. Text from unknown number. "This is Hawk, Porter's chapter. The lease situation has been handled. The property management company's limited partnership agreement included a name that appeared in the Bradford Community Partners LLC documents. That connection has been clarified. You're staying put." Nora texted back, "Thank you." The response came immediately. "Thank Emmett. He's the reason we looked." 6:15 in the evening. Porter's kitchen. Porter stood at the counter pouring coffee into a thermos for the night shift brothers staying at the school through Sunday morning. Hazel sat at the kitchen table coloring. A house with people standing in front of it. Too many people to fit on the page, so some of them were just heads floating at the edges. "Pop," Hazel said. "Yeah, baby girl. Is Emmett okay?" Porter set the thermos down, walked to the table, sat down in the chair across from her. "He's going to be okay. He's hurt right now, but he's safe and he's going to heal." Hazel colored a section of the sky blue, carefully staying inside the lines. "He got hurt because of me," she said. Porter's chest tightened. Not surprise. He'd been waiting for this. "No, He got hurt because 4 boys made a choice to hurt someone. That's not your fault. That's their fault. But if you hadn't been there, they would have hurt someone else. Tyler Thornwell hurt people because that's what Tyler Thornwell did for 4 years. Emmett knew that. He saw it happen before. And when he saw them cutting you off at the gate, he decided he wasn't going to let it happen again. Hazel set down the blue crayon, picked up the yellow one. Why, she asked. Porter thought about a hospital room, about broken glasses and a cracked watch, and 5 words that had brought 317 men to a school on a Saturday morning. Because you were little, Porter said, that's all. Hazel looked at him. At the specific way her grandfather said those words, like they meant more than what they sounded like. Can I meet him? Hazel asked. When he's ready, Porter said. When the ribs don't hurt so much and school starts again and things settle down, you'll meet him and you can say thank you. Hazel went back to coloring. Porter watched her for a moment, the careful way she chose each color, the way she pressed the crayon to the paper with just enough pressure to make it bright but not enough to break it. She was little, that's all. And for 4 years, the system designed to protect children like her had protected the wrong child instead. Porter stood up, walked back to the counter, picked up the thermos. His phone buzzed. Text from Caldwell filed. State AG has it. Monday morning they move. Porter texted back, good. He looked at Hazel, at the drawing on the table, at the house with too many people to fit on one page. She'd drawn Emmett in the front row, standing next to Porter, holding something that looked like glasses. Porter didn't say anything about it. He just screwed the lid on the thermos and walked to the door and drove back to the school where 317 motorcycles were still standing witness on a sidewalk in Dearborn Heights. 11:34 at night. Patricia Renwick's house. Porter and Hawk stood on Patricia Renwick's front porch. She answered in jeans and a sweater, clearly not expecting visitors on a Saturday night. She looked at Porter's vest, at Hawk's face. Ms. Renwick, Hawk said, we need to talk about Tyler Thornwell's behavioral file. Her expression didn't change, but something behind her eyes did. I don't know what you're talking about, she said. 14 incidents in the physical file, Hawk said calmly. 4 in the digital system. We have both. We have the document access logs showing your login removing entries. We have the email correspondence between you and Garrett Thornwell spanning 3 years. We have the voicemail he left you Friday night. Renwick's hand tightened on the doorframe. I don't have to talk to you, she said. You're right, Hawk said. You don't. But you'll be talking to someone Monday. Probably a Wayne County investigator, probably the state AG's office. And when they ask you how 14 incidents became 4, you can explain it to them. Or you can explain it to us now. And maybe we can help you understand what's about to happen and how you navigate it. Renwick looked past them, at the street, at the October night that had started like every other Saturday and was now something else entirely. If I talk to you, what happened, she asked. You tell us everything, Porter said, from the beginning. And we make one call to a lawyer who handles whistleblower cases before this turns into something you can't walk back from. Renwick stepped aside. They walked into her living room. She sat on the couch. Porter and Hawk stayed standing. How long, Hawk asked. 3 years, Renwick said quietly. Garrett called me after the first complaint about Tyler. He didn't threaten me. He just reminded me that Ridgemont had been recommended for full scholarship fund allocation, that he'd always been an advocate for the school, that he wanted to make sure we continued to get everything we deserved. And you understood what that meant, Hawk said. I understood what it meant, Renwick said. Her voice was shaking now. I told myself I was protecting the programs, the reading intervention specialists, the extended day program, the technology that helps 600 kids. I told myself that Tyler's incidents weren't severe enough to risk losing that funding, that if I documented them properly, if I followed procedure, the system would handle it. But you didn't document them properly, Porter said. No, Renwick said. I didn't. I kept the physical file complete because I thought I don't know what I thought. That maybe someday someone would look, that I was covering myself. But I removed the entries from the digital system because I knew that's what Garrett was checking. And every time I did it, I told myself it was the last time. That next incident, I'd escalate it properly. But there was always a next allocation, always another program that needed funding. Her hands were shaking in her lap. I knew what I was doing, she said. I knew it was wrong. And I did it anyway because I was afraid of what would happen if I didn't. Hawk looked at Porter. Porter nodded once. Here's what happens next, Hawk said. You're going to give us access to everything. Every email, every phone log, Every document you have connecting Thornwell to the school's funding allocations. You're going to testify when the state AG's office subpoenas you, which they will, and you're going to cooperate fully, immediately, without hesitation. And if I do that, Renwick asked, then maybe you're a witness instead of a co-conspirator, Hawk said. Maybe you're someone who was compromised instead of someone who enabled abuse. I can't promise you walk away from this, but I can promise that cooperation is the only version of this where you have any control over what happens next. Renwick looked at her hands, at the living room she'd lived in for 12 years, at the life she'd built that was about to come apart. Okay, she said quietly. 1:47 in the morning, Sunday. Caldwell's phone rang, his forensic contact, the one who'd been pulling metadata from Garrett Thornwell's county laptop using the remote access credentials Renwick had provided. The scholarship fund disbursement memos have tracked changes showing Thornwell's manual adjustments to reserve reclassification language. Timestamped, attributed to his login. This isn't circumstantial anymore, Caldwell said to Hawk on a conference call at 2:03. This is documentary proof of fraud. His phone buzzed again. Mitchell. The scholarship fund case just opened a federal investigation into 3 other county-level education funds in Michigan. Same pattern, same reclassification language, same audit threshold exploitation. Thornwell wasn't alone. This is a network, and without your evidence Saturday, we wouldn't have known where to look. Porter listened to the phone call standing in his garage at 2:30. He looked at his Harley, his vest, thought about Emmett holding broken glasses, about Nora crying in a bathroom because she was afraid of losing her home and her job, about 14 kids whose complaints had been buried, about James Thornwell in an adult care facility visited 4 times in 9 years by the brother who depleted his trust. How many victims? Porter asked quietly. Caldwell checked his notes. 14 kids with documented complaints about Tyler, 4 parents who escalated to the district, 2 who transferred schools, 1 hospitalized. James Thornwell defrauded of $147,800. Every scholarship-eligible student at Ridgemont K-8 who should have been receiving support but wasn't because money was diverted. And counting. Because if nobody looked, Thornwell would have kept going. His fiscal year 24 reclassification was pending signature. If that closed, the diversion would be locked into the official record and substantially harder to reverse. Porter was quiet for a long moment. File it tomorrow, he said. 9 in the morning, everything you have. Then he walked to his Harley, started the engine, rode through the empty streets back to Ridgemont K-8, where brothers were standing watch through the night. Because that's what the patch meant. Not that you were the strongest person in the room. That you were the person who showed up when someone small needed you to be strong. Sunday, October 13th, 9:17 in the morning. Richard Caldwell pressed send. The fraud complaint filed electronically to Wayne County. Copied to the Michigan Attorney General's office. Time-stamped. Documented. Evidence attached: financial records, emails. Renwick's testimony, Palmer's admission, FBI surveillance data, metadata analysis. Petition to unseal the James Thornwell probate settlement. Request for emergency audit of the Dearborn Heights Community Youth Scholarship Fund. The state AG's office received it at 11:43, 2:34 in the afternoon. Garrett Thornwell sat in his home office reviewing documents. County business. Greenway maintenance proposals from the Homeowners Association meeting. Budget allocations for the upcoming fiscal quarter. His phone rang. His attorney. Garrett, we have a problem. What kind of problem? The kind where you need to move assets now. There's a fraud complaint filed this morning. State AG has it. They're going to freeze accounts. Thornwell's expression didn't change, but his hand tightened on the phone. How much time do I have? Hours, maybe less. Thornwell hung up, opened his laptop, started transferring funds from Bradford Community Partners, LLC, to an offshore account he'd established 2 years ago for exactly this contingency. $180,000, moving in increments small enough not to trigger immediate alerts. What he didn't know was that Agent Sarah Mitchell had a real-time surveillance warrant on all his accounts, had since 7 months ago. She watched the transfers happen, logged each one, added money laundering to the charges. At 3:47, Thornwell called Patricia Renwick, got her voicemail, left a message. Patricia, I know you talked to them. That was a mistake. You think cooperating protects you. You're implicated in every decision we made. You removed those records. Your login, your choices. They're coming for you too. Call me back. We can still manage this together. Renwick listened to the voicemail, hands shaking, called Hawk. I need a lawyer, she said. A real one. He's going to say I did this alone. That's why you're testifying, First Hawk said. That's why your cooperation matters. Get ahead of his story. Monday, October 14th, 8:30 in the morning. Emmett Carson walked through the main entrance of Ridgemont K-8 Academy, wearing his new glasses, carrying his backpack, moving carefully because the ribs still hurt, but not like Saturday. The hallway went quiet, not the bad kind of quiet, the quiet that had followed him for 4 years every time Tyler Thornwell's name came up. A different kind, the quiet of people who'd seen something over the weekend that they were still trying to process. 317 motorcycles, a boy with broken ribs, a story that had made the evening news on every Detroit area station by Sunday morning, a county commissioner under investigation for fraud, a principal who'd resigned before they could finish asking questions. Emmett walked to his locker, opened it, started putting books away. A voice beside him said Emmett. He turned. Caleb Brennan, 8th grader, had been in the cafeteria 6 weeks ago when Tyler knocked Emmett's lunch tray and made the threat in front of 14 students. Caleb had watched it happen, had done nothing. I just wanted to say, Caleb started, then stopped, tried again. I should have said something in the cafeteria when Tyler, it's okay, Emmett said. It's not okay, Caleb said. I was there. I heard what he said to you. I didn't know what to do. Emmett looked at Caleb, at the specific guilt in his face, at the way he was standing there, like he'd been carrying this for 6 weeks and had finally found someone to hand it to. You can do something now, Emmett said. Next time you see something, you can do something then. Caleb nodded once, didn't say anything else, just walked away. The bell rang. Emmett closed his locker, walked to homeroom. Ms. Sullivan was at her desk when he entered. She looked up, smiled. Not the careful, worried smile she'd been giving him for 6 months. A real smile. Good morning, Emmett, she said. Good morning. He sat down in his usual seat, 3rd row center, the seat he'd been sitting in since the first day of 6th grade. Tyler Thornwell's seat back row corner, where he could see the door and the windows and everyone in the room was empty. It would stay empty. Emmett took out the journal Ms. Sullivan had given him Sunday. Leather-bound, blank pages, ribbon bookmark. She'd written something on the inside cover. Dear Emmett, what you did Friday afternoon was the bravest thing I have ever witnessed. You stepped in when every adult failed to. I will carry that with me for the rest of my life. Ms. Sullivan. Emmett opened to the first page. Wrote Monday, October 14th. Tyler's not here. I am. Then closed it and put it away and listened to Ms. Sullivan start the morning announcements. 4:22 in the afternoon. 2 Wayne County Sheriff's deputies arrived at Garrett Thornwell's house with a warrant. Seizure of financial records and electronic devices related to the Dearborn Heights Community Youth Scholarship Fund and Bradford Community Partners, LLC. Agent Sarah Mitchell was with them. So was an assistant prosecutor from the state AG's office. Thornwell answered the door in reading glasses and a cardigan. He'd been genuinely working on the Greenway maintenance proposal. He looked at the deputies, at the warrant, at Mitchell's badge. I don't understand, Thornwell said. Mr. Thornwell, we have a warrant to seize financial records and electronic devices related to the Dearborn Heights Community Youth Scholarship Fund and Bradford Community Partners, LLC. We'll need access to your home office and your county-issued laptop. Thornwell's expression didn't change, but something behind his eyes did. A calculation happening faster than most people could track. I'd like to call my attorney, Thornwell said. You're welcome to do that, Mitchell said. But the warrant is being executed now. They walked past him into the house, found the home office, the filing cabinet with the combination lock. Thornwell provided the combination without resistance, which meant he hadn't fully understood yet what they were looking for. Inside 3 years of reserve reclassification records, Bradford Community Partners, LLC bank statements, and a handwritten note in Thornwell's handwriting. Fiscal year 24 closed 71,533 reserve/BCP transfer. Pending audit window close. Mitchell photographed it, bagged it, looked at Thornwell. When was the last time you transferred funds from the scholarship reserve account to Bradford Community Partners? I don't know what you're talking about, Thornwell said. Your handwriting suggests otherwise, Mitchell said. Thornwell's attorney arrived 23 minutes later. By then, the deputies had seized the laptop, the filing cabinet contents, and 3 boxes of financial records. Thornwell stood in his driveway watching them load everything into a county vehicle. Said quietly to his attorney, "I was careful. I was so careful." The attorney looked at him, didn't say anything. Careful wasn't the same as legal. Tuesday, October 15th, 12:17 in the afternoon. Wayne County Courthouse. Garrett Thornwell stood before Judge Catherine Morrison's bench, flanked by two attorneys whose combined hourly rate exceeded what most people in Dearborn Heights made in a month. The charges were read: education fund fraud, misappropriation of public funds, abuse of fiduciary duty, conspiracy to suppress mandatory reporting, money laundering. The evidence was presented in summary form: Caldwell's filing, the forensic analysis of Thornwell's laptop, the 3-year disbursement records, the handwritten note found in the filing cabinet. The petition to unseal the James Thornwell probate settlement had been granted at 9:47 that morning. Judge Morrison looked at the evidence, at Thornwell, at the two attorneys trying very hard to argue that their client posed no flight risk. "Mr. Thornwell," Judge Morrison said, "you are charged with diverting $214,600 from a county scholarship fund over a 3-year period. The state has presented evidence suggesting this is not the first time you have engaged in financial misconduct involving individuals under your fiduciary care." She paused. "I am setting bail at $500,000, cash or bond. You will surrender your passport. You will not leave the state of Michigan pending trial. You will have no contact with any current or former employees of the Dearborn Heights School District. You will have no access to any accounts associated with Bradford Community Partners, LLC. Do you understand these conditions?" Thornwell's lead attorney started to speak. Judge Morrison held up one hand. "I asked Mr. Thornwell," she said. Thornwell looked at the judge, at the evidence on her desk, at the courtroom behind him where Hawks sat in the third row watching. "I understand," Thornwell said quietly. "Bail is set," Judge Morrison said. "Next hearing November 4th. Court is adjourned." The gavel came down. Thornwell was led out of the courtroom by a deputy. His attorneys followed, already talking on their phones. Hawks stood up, walked to the hallway, called Porter. "It's done," Hawks said. "Bail set at $500,000. He's not going anywhere." "Good," Porter said. "There's something else. Mitchell called this morning. The scholarship fund case opened a federal investigation into 3 other county-level education funds in Michigan. Same pattern, same reclassification language, same audit threshold exploitation. Thornwell wasn't the only one doing this." Porter didn't say anything for a moment. "How many kids?" he finally asked. "Mitchell didn't have a number yet," Hawks said, "but she said the network was bigger than they thought. And without the evidence we handed them Saturday, they wouldn't have known where to look." "Then we keep looking," Porter said. 3 weeks later, early November. Porter stood in the parking lot of Dearborn Heights Medical Center, drinking coffee from a paper cup that had gone cold 20 minutes ago. He wasn't here for an appointment. He'd just been driving past and had pulled in without really deciding to. Room 214 was on the 2nd floor. He could see the window from where he stood. The room was empty now. Different patient, different crisis. The hospital kept moving. But Porter could still see it. The way Emmett had been sitting up in that bed, broken glasses in his lap, trying not to look like he was in pain. The way the boy had answered the question, why, with 5 words that had carried more moral weight than anything Porter had heard in 31 years of wearing this patch. She was little, that's all. Porter had been 9 years old in 1965 when a nameless boy stepped between him and 3 older kids outside a school fence. The memory was fragment and feeling more than image. October afternoon, cold enough that Porter's breath had shown. He'd been walking home from school, same as always, when he heard the voices behind him. Rough, older. The kind of voices that meant trouble was looking for someone smaller. He'd turned around. 3 boys. 7th graders, maybe. 8th. Big enough that Porter's 9-year-old self understood immediately what was about to happen. Then another kid appeared. Came from nowhere. Or maybe from the bike racks. Porter couldn't remember. The boy was maybe 11, 12, wore a jacket that was too big for him, had dark hair that needed cutting. He stepped between Porter and the 3 older boys. Said something Porter couldn't hear from where he stood frozen 15 feet away. The biggest of the 3 older kids laughed, then pushed the boy in the too big jacket. The boy didn't push back, didn't run, just stood there. Said something else, still too quiet for Porter to hear. The 3 older boys looked at each other, then at the boy in the jacket, then they walked away. just turned and left like they'd gotten bored with a game that wasn't fun anymore. The boy in the jacket turned to look at Porter, made eye contact for maybe 2 seconds, then walked away in the opposite direction. Porter never saw him again. He tried to find him, spent weeks looking in hallways in the cafeteria at dismissal, asked his teacher if there was a new student, asked the secretary in the main office if she knew who he was talking about. Nobody knew, or if they did, they didn't remember. After a while, Porter stopped asking, but he never stopped wondering. What was that boy's name? Where did he go? Did he know what he'd done? Did he understand that 58 years later, Porter would still be carrying that moment? The specific weight of being saved by someone whose name you never learned. The gratitude that had nowhere to go because you couldn't thank a ghost. Porter had spent 58 years carrying that name-shaped absence, the hole where a thank you should have lived. On a Friday night in October in a hospital room in Dearborn Heights, Michigan, he'd found it. Not the same boy, but the same choice, the same understanding that some things are simple. A small person is in danger. You have the ability to step in. You step in. Porter finished the cold coffee, threw the cup in the trash, stood in the parking lot for another moment, looking up at room 214. The window was dark now. Whoever was in there didn't need the overhead lights on. He thought about Emmett sitting in that bed, holding broken glasses, answering why with 5 words that had more moral clarity than anything Porter had heard in decades of watching men try to justify the things they did and didn't do. She was little, that's all. No calculation, no weighing of costs, no consideration of what it might cost him personally to step in. Just the simple recognition that someone small needed help and he could provide it. That was enough. Porter got back on his bike, started the engine, rode home through streets that were emptying as evening turned to night, past houses where people were having dinner with their families, past parks where the swings moved slightly in the October wind, past the elementary school where his daughter had gone when she was small, past all the ordinary places where ordinary life happened, while some kids learned that the adults who were supposed to protect them had decided to protect someone else instead. He pulled into his garage, killed the engine, sat there in the silence for a moment. Hazel was upstairs, safe. The yellow coat was in the kitchen, a reminder of what almost happened and what actually did. Emmett was in Inkster, safe, new glasses, ribs healing. The system that had failed him for 4 years was about to discover what happens when you make invisible a child who has 317 men willing to make him visible. Porter walked into his house, made himself dinner he wasn't hungry for, checked on Hazel. She was still asleep, still safe. He went to his room, lay down on top of the covers, stared at the ceiling in the dark. Thought about a boy in a too-big jacket in 1965. Thought about Emmett in a hospital bed in 2024. Thought about all the boys and girls in between who'd needed someone to step in and whether anyone had. Sleep came eventually, but not before Porter had made a decision. This wouldn't happen again. Not in his city, not on his watch, not to any child he could reach. The patch he wore meant something. It always had, but now it meant something more. It meant that when a child needed someone to show up, someone would. Every time. No exceptions. 6 months later. April. Emmett Carson stood in front of the Dearborn Heights School Board at their monthly public meeting, holding a folder that contained 9 pages of typed testimony and a handwritten note from Ms. Sullivan that said simply, "You don't have to do this, but if you want to, I'll be there." She was sitting in the 3rd row. Porter was sitting beside her. Emmett hadn't asked them to come. He just mentioned at dinner 2 nights ago that he was planning to speak at the school board meeting about the district's bullying response protocol. Nora had called Porter. Porter had called Ms. Sullivan. And now here they were. The board chair, Dr. Ellis, appointed after the previous chair resigned in November, looked at Emmett. "Whenever you're ready," she said gently. Emmett opened the folder. "My name is Emmett Carson. I'm 11 years old. I'm a 6th grader at Ridgemont K-8 Academy. On October 11th of last year, I was assaulted by 4 students in the school parking lot. I suffered 2 fractured ribs, 7 stitches, and significant bruising. I had reported the primary assailant twice before that day. Both reports were filed. Neither resulted in meaningful action." He paused, looked up at the board. 5 people sat at the table, all of them watching him, none of them looking away. "I'm not here to talk about what happened to me," Emmett continued. "I'm here to talk about the 14 other students whose complaints about the same person were suppressed over 4 years. I'm here to talk about a system where a physical file and a digital file showed 2 different stories, and nobody noticed until it was too late. He turned to the second page. The Angels Watch program that was proposed last month. The one that would require monthly audits of behavioral incident files and mandatory third-party review of any complaint that involves serious injury or repeated patterns. That program exists because what happened to me wasn't an accident. It was a system working exactly the way it was designed, and the design was wrong. Dr. Ellis leaned forward slightly. Mr. Carson, she said, I want to assure you that the board takes these concerns very seriously. The interim principal has implemented immediate reforms to the behavioral reporting system, and we are currently reviewing. I know, Emmett said. I've read the reforms. They're good, but they're only good if they're permanent, and they're only permanent if someone is watching to make sure they stay that way. He closed the folder. I'm asking the board to pass the Angels Watch program as written, with full funding, with mandatory reporting requirements, with third-party oversight that doesn't answer to anyone in the district. Because the next time a kid tries to report something, I want them to know that someone is actually going to look. Not file it. Look. He sat down. The room was quiet for 4 seconds. Then someone started clapping. Porter, standing in the third row, slow, deliberate claps. Miss Sullivan stood up beside him, started clapping. Then someone else, then another person, then the entire room. Dr. Ellis didn't stop it. She let it go for 11 seconds, then raised one hand. Thank you, Mr. Carson, she said. The board will review the Angels Watch proposal at our executive session next week. You'll have our answer by the end of the month. 3 weeks later, the Angels Watch program passed unanimously, funding $18,700 annually from the general district budget, sourced from the scholarship fund allocations that had been recovered from Garrett Thornwell's fraudulent transfers. Oversight independent third-party auditor appointed by the Wayne County School Board, reporting directly to the state. Mandatory reporting any behavioral incident involving injury, repeated complaints, or pattern behaviors would trigger automatic review within 48 hours. Emmett found out the day the vote went through. Ms. Sullivan told him during homeroom, handed him a printed copy of the resolution with his name in the third paragraph. Student advocate Emmett Carson, whose testimony before this board in April brought to light systemic failures in our behavioral reporting architecture. He read it twice, then put it in his backpack next to the journal Ms. Sullivan had given him, and the broken glasses he still hadn't thrown away. He'd stopped carrying them everywhere, but he hadn't let them go. Not yet, maybe not ever. Some things you kept because they still worked. Some things you kept because they reminded you what broken looked like from the inside. And some things you kept because you'd earned the right to decide when to let them go. 3 years later, October. Emmett Carson was 14 now, freshman at Dearborn Heights High, honor roll every semester since 6th grade, student council treasurer, volunteering at the hospital on weekends, the same hospital where Porter had walked into room 214 3 years ago and asked a simple question. He was in the guidance counselor's office on a Tuesday afternoon, October 8th, because Ms. Anderson, the new counselor hired 2 years ago specifically to handle bullying and harassment complaints, had asked him to sit in on an intake meeting with a 7th grader who'd filed 3 complaints in 4 months and was starting to think nothing was going to change. The 7th grader's name was Marcus. He was small for his age, quiet, had the specific posture of a kid who'd learned to make himself invisible in hallways. Emmett recognized it immediately. He'd worn it for 4 years. Ms. Anderson had explained to Marcus that Emmett had been through something similar, that he might have advice, that sometimes it helped to talk to someone who understood what it felt like from the inside. Marcus sat in the chair across from Emmett, looking at his hands. They said you got hurt, Marcus said quietly. 3 years ago. Yeah, Emmett said. And they said people came, like a lot of people. 317, Emmett said. Marcus looked up at Emmett's face, at the small scar above his left eyebrow that was still visible if you knew to look for it. Did it stop? Marcus asked. After that, Emmett thought about Tyler Thornwell, about charges filed and trials completed and sentencing that had happened 16 months ago. 8 years in state prison. No parole eligibility for 5. Lifetime ban from working with children in any capacity. He thought about Garrett Thornwell, currently serving a 6-year federal sentence for education fund fraud after a plea deal that required him to cooperate fully with the FBI's investigation into 2 other county commissioners running the same scheme. He thought about Principal Renwick, who'd resigned before they finished the investigation and now worked in a private sector job that had nothing to do with schools. It stopped, Emmett said, but not because they were scared of what would happen if they kept going. It stopped because the system finally worked the way it was supposed to, and it only worked because people outside the system made it impossible to ignore. Marcus nodded slowly. Ms. Anderson said you helped write the program, Marcus said. The Angels Watch thing. I gave testimony, Emmett said. The school board wrote it. But yeah, I helped. Does it work? Emmett looked at Ms. Anderson. She nodded once. Permission to tell the truth. 78% reduction in repeat behavioral incidents since implementation, Emmett said. 3 other districts in Wayne County have adopted the same model. The state's Department of Education is reviewing it for statewide rollout. He paused. It works, but you still have to report it. The system can't work if people don't use it. Marcus looked at his hands again. I'm tired of reporting things, he said quietly. I know, Emmett said. And he did know. He knew exactly what Marcus meant. The specific exhaustion of being the kid who kept saying something was wrong and watching the machine process your complaint and spit back nothing. But this time is different, Emmett said. This time there's someone watching to make sure your complaint doesn't disappear. Ms. Anderson has to file it within 24 hours. The third-party auditor has to review it within 48. And if they don't, there's a consequence. Not for you, for them. He reached into his backpack and pulled out the journal Miss Sullivan had given him 3 years ago. It was full now, pages and pages of entries, some about school, some about life, some about the nightmares he'd had for 6 months after the fight that had finally stopped when he'd started writing them down. This is mine, Emmett said. My teacher gave it to me the week after I got hurt. She told me to write things down, things that happened, things I was afraid of, things the system wasn't recording. He held it out to Marcus. You don't have to keep a shadow log. The system works better now. But if you need a place where you can write things that are just for you, where nobody else has to read it unless you want them to, you can have this. I'll get another one. Marcus looked at the journal, at Emmett's face, at the scar. You really got hurt for someone you didn't even know, Marcus asked. Emmett thought about a girl in a yellow coat, about Porter's granddaughter, about the specific weight of being 11 years old and seeing 4 boys cut off someone small, and deciding you apparently couldn't walk past that. She was little, Emmett said. That's all. Marcus took the journal, held it carefully like it mattered. Thank you, Marcus said. Ms. Anderson walked Marcus out 15 minutes later, filed his complaint at 3:47. The third-party auditor called at 9:22 the following morning. 2 weeks later, the student Marcus had reported 3 times was transferred to a different school pending disciplinary review. The Angels Watch program logged it as case number 40. Successful intervention, 0 repeat incidents. Emmett found out about it from Ms. Anderson during a check-in meeting the following week. He wanted me to tell you. Thank you, Ms. Anderson said. He said the journal is helping. Emmett nodded once. He'd bought a new journal the day after giving Marcus his old one. Same leather binding, same blank pages. He'd written 1 sentence on the first page. October 8th, I passed it on, then closed it and put it in his backpack where the broken glasses used to be. He'd finally let those go 6 months ago, put them in a small box, put the box on a shelf in his closet. He didn't need to carry them anymore, but he'd kept them. Some things you kept because they reminded you what broken looked like from the inside and what it looked like to be put back together. Porter Blackwood stood in his garage on a Friday evening in October, 3 years and 2 weeks after he'd walked into room 214 at Dearborn Heights Medical Center. He was 69 now. The knees were worse. The prosthetic index finger still worked fine. The vest still fit the way it had fit for 33 years. On the workbench beside his Harley sat a phone. On the phone's screen was a folder labeled Why We Ride. Inside the folder, messages from people he'd never met. Parents whose children had been helped by the Angels Watch program. A woman in Ohio whose nephew had been removed from an abusive foster home after a chapter in Cincinnati got a call and mobilized in 47 minutes. A teacher in Indiana who'd watched a Hells Angels chapter show up to a school board meeting and stand in the back of the room, not speaking, not threatening, just present, while she gave testimony about a principal who'd been covering for a coach who'd been hurting kids for 2 years. The coach was in prison now. The principal was not. But the principal wasn't working in schools anymore either. Porter scrolled through the messages. There were 43 of them. He'd never responded to any of them. He didn't need to. The messages weren't asking for anything. They were just saying, we saw, we noticed, we're grateful. His phone buzzed, new message, unknown number, a photo, Emmett Carson, Standing in front of Dearborn Heights High, wearing a student council shirt, holding a certificate, grinning. The gap between his front teeth still there, the scar above his eyebrow barely visible now, the glasses sitting straight on his face. The text below the photo read, "Emmett wanted you to see this. He won the county essay competition for youth advocacy. The prize money is going to the Angels Watch Fund. He said to tell you thank you for everything. Nora." Porter looked at the photo for a long time. He thought about a boy with 2 broken ribs sitting in a hospital bed holding glasses that didn't work anymore. He thought about 5 words that had changed everything. He thought about being 9 years old and a nameless boy stepping in and getting knocked down and standing back up anyway. He'd carried that name-shaped absence for 58 years. It didn't feel like an absence anymore. It felt like a thread, connecting him to Emmett, connecting Emmett to Marcus, connecting every person who'd ever made the choice to step in when stepping in was the harder thing. The thread didn't erase what had been taken. It just meant the taking hadn't been the end. Porter saved the photo, added it to the folder labeled "Why We Ride." Then he put the phone down, walked to his Harley, started the engine. He had a shift at a school tonight, not Ridgemont K-8, a different school where a different parent had called and said her daughter was being harassed and the principal wasn't returning her calls. Could someone please just stand outside during pickup so her daughter knew someone was watching? 17 brothers were meeting him there at 2:45. They'd stand on the sidewalk, arms crossed, silent, and a little girl would walk out of school knowing that the scary-looking men in the leather vests were the safest thing in her world right now. Porter pulled out of his garage. The October afternoon was cold and gray and flat, the way Michigan October afternoons were flat. He rode toward the school where he was needed, because that's what the patch meant. Not that you were the strongest person in the room, that you were the person who showed up when someone small needed you to be strong. This story isn't really about motorcycles or patches or the 317 men who stood on a sidewalk for 47 hours in October. It's about a decision. The decision a boy made when he saw someone small in danger and couldn't make himself walk past it. The decision a grandfather made when he heard 5 words in a hospital room and understood he'd been carrying them his whole life. The decision every single person makes when they see something wrong and choose in that moment whether to look away or to stay. If you have ever been the person in that room, the one who reported something and watched it disappear into filing cabinets and bureaucratic protocols and careful explanations about charging thresholds and review windows, this is for you. You were not wrong to speak. The system failed you, not the other way around. And if you are the person who has the power to change that system, the teacher, the administrator, the board member, the police officer, the neighbor who sees something and wonders if it's your place to say something, this is for you too. It is your place. It is always your place. You don't need 317 motorcycles to make a difference. You need to be willing to say, this is my lane, and then stay in it. Emmett Carson didn't stop Tyler Thornwell by filing a complaint. He stopped him by stepping in. Porter Blackwood didn't fix the system by asking nicely. He fixed it by making an 11-year-old boy visible to people with the power to act. The Angels Watch program exists now in 4 districts in Michigan. It's under review for statewide implementation. That program exists because Emmett stood in front of a school board and said the system was wrong and nobody looked away. The broken glasses are still in a box on a shelf in Emmett's closet. He doesn't carry them anymore, but he kept them. Some things you keep because they remind you what broken looks like and what it looks like to be whole. Porter rides through Michigan on a Friday evening, heading toward a school where a little girl needs to see that someone came. The thread connects. From the boy in 1965 to Porter to Emmett to Marcus to the next child who will need someone to step in. The thread doesn't break. It just keeps going. She was little, that's all. And sometimes that's everything.